going to be your little mini lecture on formative assessment. I'm going to go quick. The difference between me being quick and here in the classroom, you can obviously pause. The idea why I'm doing this is because we ran out of time and we have this assignment. It's your formative assessment assignment. Now, some of you have been asking me, hey, can I use a lesson from before and all that stuff? That's 100% fine. Just make sure you follow along the rubric, and providing the lesson plan, your standards you address, the curricular aims and all that stuff, learning targets. But the big parts are going to be the instructional tasks, the description of your formative assessment, and then your write-up. Okay, so the notes that and the lecture that we were going to do is essentially, okay, let's get that right there. Okay, so one of the things that you have to walk away from is that what exactly is a formative assessment, and then what are proper ways to implement it, what are some not so good ways to implement it, and how is it beneficial for our classroom and all that stuff. So those are the things we have right there. So what exactly is formative assessment? The textbook defines it as a planned process in which assessment evidence or student status is used by teachers to adjust their ongoing instructional procedures, or by students to adjust their current learning tactics. So essentially, it's a process. You have a curricular aim at the end, and as you're moving towards that curricular aim, teacher makes adjustments, students learn they need to make adjustments. It's kind of, and it's all part of the learning process. It's not always a test, and it's something that needs to be done on a daily basis. So again, it's not a test, but it's a process, and it's an instructional strategy. One of the things that's absolutely crushing me as a teacher this year is I obviously, teach this to you, and I have a pretty decent background for the years I've been teaching. I'm teaching 3 different preps this year at the high school level, and really could be mentioned as 4 because one of those classes is a special education classroom, so I do things a little bit differently in there for my students with special needs. When you're planning 3 or 4 different classes a day, and sometimes you are literally going, for me, it's AP Psych, Global, Sociology, then maybe back to Global, all 4 classes in a row. It's tough to continue this process and do it, but you really have to. You have to do this because it matters so much to you and also matters so much to the kids. So what's the difference between the two of these, a formative and summative? You can see the chart right there, and obviously from your notes, but the formative assessment happens while the learning's taking place, and then your overall mission is to improve decisions because of the feedback that you're getting. Summative assessment occurs after you learn it, and then you want to basically assess the learning and also the quality of teaching. Okay, it's never the test, just like we talked about this past class. It's how we use those tests. Okay, it's not just a process for the teachers. It's really nice to see the students. I kind of equate it to I coach baseball, and a kid always swings the bat a certain way, and they are never successful. And all of a sudden, the light bulb goes off. Boom. Maybe that coach isn't all that dumb. Let me try it that way. And all of a sudden, they start putting the bat on the ball, and it's a great, teaching in the classroom is the same way. You literally will see those light bulbs go off as soon as they start getting and changing their course direction and all that stuff as well. So there's a learning progression, and the textbook talks about how the sequence set of building blocks students must master route to mastering a target curricular aim. So it's basically like a process, right? You have to identify these building blocks or these lower order curricular aims in an effort to master the higher order ones. So if you're learning to run a marathon, you can't really think, okay, I just got to figure out how to do 26.2 miles. You got to figure out how to do the first part of the course, the middle part of the course, the last part of the course. You got to learn how to plan your routes and so on and so forth. Okay. So an example of this, you have to write a clear explanatory essay. But it's kind of like what I'm doing right now. I'm teaching this new thing called a CRQ in class. I can't just say, here, do this. I have to give them all these little lower order aims like, hey, what does reliability mean? This is for my class. What does all these different things? What is bias? And you got to teach these things because that all goes into the CRQ. And so here's a nice little graph that actually explains that you have these knowledge-based things plus these skill sets that all eventually get into this curricular aim. All right. So again, these should really be modest in number. Okay. They're also sequenced. So, you have to plan this stuff out. It's, like 10:30 at night right now, and I'm doing this for you, but I just got done 5 minutes ago doing lesson planning because I want to make sure that I'm not unprepared to do all these things with my students. I don't want to scare you, but it just kind of goes with the job every now and then when situations arise and all that stuff. Poplin talks about this 4 levels approach. I never really thought of it this way, but it really does make sense in how he puts it. There's 4 different levels. The first one is you collect evidence, and then you use the evidence to adjust instruction. That's the popular model for formative assessments. However, there's also student learning tactics adjustments. So they review the assessment, and then they use that to adjust their learning strategy. One of the things that many of my colleagues do is they give these little tickets out the door. They check for understanding in class, but they never go over with the students. So they just say right or wrong, and then they move on. And we expect the kids to figure it out, and that's not what this is all about. Ultimately, you want to create this classroom climate shift, and that you can't do in the first week of school. So you create what you would call a learning-dominated classroom. You have to teach these skills. Master teachers teach it, it's kind of like group work, right? You can't just say get in the group and work. You have to teach the social skills necessary and the jobs necessary in an effort to be successful in those groups. And then ultimately what you want is a school-wide implementation. So it starts with the teacher, then it goes to the students, then the classroom, and then the school. And here's a nice little chart that you see in your textbook that you can look at and kind of analyze. Also talks about the 5 applications approach. So creating these immediate instructional adjustments. So you collect evidence. You give tests. You give tickets at the door. Google Classroom assignments. Okay, whatever it might be. You analyze it, and then you make necessary changes on the spot if necessary. I kind of do that today. I had a very chatty class today, and they weren't getting it, so we had to make some adjustments in class. And that just really, and that can look at a bunch of different ways. Obviously, in classroom management strategies, and then you have to create these near future instructional adjustments. Collect evidence, analyze evidence, and then make necessary changes during later instruction. Last chance instructional adjustments. Okay, so when the high-stake tests are close by, you do dress rehearsals of the exam, you analyze the evidence, and then you make tailor-made adjustments to get through the shortcomings. So, for example, they may not be doing well in this part of the class or whatever it might be, the writing part. You go over that stuff. And then the learning tactic adjustments is you make evidence available to students from collecting that data, and they kind of start figuring out what's working for them and what's not. It's kind of like that metacognitive strategy. You want the kids to start thinking about their thinking, and you want them to be able to be successful by making their own adjustments. Again, I'll go back to baseball. I can tell my hitters and I can tell my pitchers everything they want to know about, but they're the ones that are playing the game. So when they're out there, they're the ones that have to think through the process. Okay, the ball's going a little bit to the right when I pitch, or I'm swinging over the ball when I'm hitting. They need to be able to do that mental checklist in order to do it. It's the same thing that we have in our classrooms. And then ultimately get that classroom climate shift. So again, nice little chart for that. And then the 5 strategies approach. So you clarify, share, and understand learning intentions and criteria for success. Okay, tell them what you want. Learning intentions are so important. And then the success criteria is provided that is applicable to the full range of tasks. So whatever that you're trying to accomplish in class, you have to put that out there and what you hope for them to do. You have to elicit evidence of the learning. You have to share those. You have to talk about it. A lot of times we're so really. Looks like we're going to get cut off right here. So I'm going to stop it right here. I'm going to do part 2. Okay.